In 9:45, and so we're going to go ahead and get started because we are joined and led this morning by our own James, and so we're very excited for James to share about an exciting new mission project and a bit more about what his family's up to, which is going to be very awesome and very fun to hear and experience. But we're going to open up our time together with the word of prayer. So let's pray. Holy God, we thank you so much for this morning and for gathering us together to think about the ways that you are at work in our world. And we're so grateful for the way that you have worked through James and his family. We ask that you bless this new mission project and this new idea that James' family has as he seeks to build a new church and to tell people of your good news, the good news of Jesus in India and across the world. And so we ask that you be in our conversation tonight to help enlighten the ways that you are at work around us. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chris.
Anybody, James?
Let me tilt this way. So, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I was explaining to Chris, like, kind of the architectural, kind of look of how like Nepalese communities kind of look. So this is on the mountainside. So you have mountainside stuff and rural stuff, and they're like typically like 3-4 story buildings with like colorful, different colors on the buildings. And then they often have like rooftop access. So it's just really gorgeous. But let me start at the beginning. So, yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm from Nepal. It's a country in between China and India. The community we're going to talk today it's called Dharamshala. And this is New Delhi, which I believe is the capital of India, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a huge Nepalese population in Dharamshala. It's kind of like a working village, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, my brother-in-law's right there. He'll be he'll be my reference point today. So so Dharamshala isn't India, but there's a huge population that is there that's a Nepalese working class. And as you'll see, there's there'll be more cool and interesting things about this particular town. This is the Nepalese flag. It's one of the coolest flags, I think. And this is like the shape of Nepal, but with the colors of the Nepalese flag. So kind of just like a geographical viewpoint. And so I'll start with my background, my family's background. So my parents, they're both devout Christians. They converted a long time ago. And you'll see, as I explain, Christianity in Nepal is on the rise, but it's very much still persecuted. So I know through my personal family's experience, they had a lot of struggles, 80s and 90s, and I don't know when they converted, but a long time ago, with, churches, trouble with the government, things of that nature. But my family came to America. My dad helped found one of the first, if not the first, Nepalese American churches in America. And that was almost 15 or 20 years ago. And since then, there's now hundreds of churches across America. Most recently, I think last year, we visited one in Dallas that's doing really, really good. There's a huge Nepalese population in America. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the 10th largest immigrant group that's currently growing. And like I said, from my personal experience, there's a huge population in the DMV, in New York, Texas, California, of course, but it's the Nepalese population itself is growing, and the churches are also growing. A church that I was part of before kind of working here, and kind of the church I was going to my whole life, is a church called Himalayan Baptist Church, and that's located in Gaithersburg. And I've personally seen that church grow from like 5 people to now like a good healthy like 30 people and families and such. And in the DMV area, they used to have this fellowship where all the churches will combine and they'll do like a picnic or something. And I've seen that grow, like the yearly annual gathering grow from a few churches to now it's like 5 to 10 churches. So it's really been kind of miraculous to kind of see the growth of this as well as my community. I remember one of my older pastors in the Himalayan Baptist Church, his uncle actually wrote the hymnal, which he translated in like the 80s, which is very, very similar to our current hymnal that we use today. And he translated it and was able to provide like the music aspect, and still to this day, that's like the primary hymnal that all Nepalese churches will utilize. And there's a lot of similar hymns from the Nepalese hymnal to our hymnal. So a lot of the songs we sing, I'm like, oh, I kind of know this, but like in a different language. So yeah, and so that's as far as my family. My dad still continues to, as you guys know, he's a chef. But he still continues to do a lot of good work with these churches. During COVID, it's kind of a blessing in disguise. All the churches were able to, a lot of the DMV churches were able to unite and hold large Zoom, like 100, 200 plus services and things of that nature, relief, et cetera, et cetera. But it was actually a blessing in disguise because they got to really unite and talk to each other. And there's quite a few in Baltimore. There's a huge Nepalese population in Baltimore, so there's a lot of in the DMV. That's primarily where it's at. So yeah, family experiences, and then as I explained, my brother-in-law, which will come into play in a second. So that's my family background. As far as church experiences in Nepal, I've been in Nepal a few times, I think 2 or 3 times. I remember the first time ever going, I was in like 3rd grade, and there were like 0 churches. As I was saying before, as you'll see, the growth and rise in Christianity in Nepal has been tremendous, but it's still faced with a lot of persecution and obstacles. So the first time I went in 3rd grade, there were literally no churches, and I remember some of the people on my mom's side, like my mom's sisters, like half of them were converted, so we would have like some sort of fellowship and things of that nature. And then I remember going again, I think in 7th grade. 7th grade, there were I think 1 or 2 churches that we visited. Then I went again in 2020, so this is like almost 10 years later. My sister got married, and there we went to like 3 or 4 different churches, and I was like, wow, that was really, really shocking to see. So in the capital of Kathmandu, we went to one church in particular that was it was really amazing to see. It was modernized. They had like a band. They had like carpeting, things like it was just little details. It was just so nice to see. And faith was really strong. There's a lot of really strong believers, people that were there, people that were learning, curious to learn. And then so that's in the capital, Kathmandu. Then the wedding was on the rural side, which is like about 10 hours away. And my sister got married in a church, but it looked like a real church. It wasn't just a building. It looked like a nice church, and they had a altar and things of that nature. And they had the pastors there. They had the choir there. They had like the choir band and things like that. So through my personal experience, I've seen in like 10, 15, 20 years how amazing the growth of Christianity has been. And also it's it's kind of important to note. So like the primary religion is Hinduism / local religions. So usually in the villages you'll worship like a local god, and then you have like your higher up god. But I've seen through personal experience the Christian community that starts to foster, and the community that I have seen, they experience a huge transformation where they're able to not only find spiritual growth, but they're personally also able to just live a little bit of a better life, just due to having a community that supports you. You have like educational programs, you have women's programs, you have a lot of different things that kind of serve the community. So I've seen a huge transformation in the certain areas that are met. And yeah, I kind of touched a little bit about the Nepalese Christian growth in America, but like I said, now there's hundreds of churches. There's all sorts of now like conferences and things where Nepalese pastors will meet and they'll discuss issues or things like that amongst each other. And like I said, similar to kind of like the parallel growth from Nepal and America, I've seen the churches kind of grow and also faith grow and things of that nature. So that all leads to the opportunity to plant a church. So my brother-in-law, Johnny, his dad is a pastor in Nepal. One of the churches that we visited was his church that he had planted and he's had for like 20, 30 years. And let me know if I'm wrong, correct me. But so he had planted the church he was at was really amazing to see. The vibrant community. They did a lot of community work. And currently, his dad, his name is Pastor Binod. He's in Dharamshala, and he kind of felt like a spiritual call to kind of go there, and I'll explain in a couple seconds why. But he's looking for opportunity to plant the church, and he had asked for support through my family, and then potentially the church because he knows I work at a church. So I was like, okay, bring up the idea and see, what, if anything, what we can do. But all in all, that's kind of my background, kind of the Nepalese Christian community background, and then the opportunity. So about Dharamshala itself, it's a small rural community with about 180K inhabitants. I think in this graphic, you can see how close it is proximity wise to New Delhi, which I believe is the capital. I don't want to be wrong, but I think it's the capital.
It is.
Okay, okay. And Nepal, of course, is here. Kathmandu is around here, and then my family's on the rural side, which is like about here. So yeah, you kind of have a distinction. So 180K inhabitants. It's also a place where one of the most renowned spiritual leaders, the Dalai Lama, the world influential figure in the Buddhist community, actively lives. So he lives in Dharamshala. I believe he was exiled. I don't know the history behind that, but he currently lives there and he operates a Buddhist monastery, and it's a huge tourist attraction. So one of the things about Nepal and Dharamshala that both applies, their primary sources of income are tourism. So they try to do a good job of being welcoming, bringing people in and things like that. In the midst of the community, and these are in his words, I kind of summarized from pastor's letter that he sent, to establish a vibrant and inclusive church community that will serve as a spiritual and social hub, fostering unity, education, and development in the village. As you can imagine, like, again, things like literacy rates, health, there's a lot of auxiliary ways the church, can provide help and be of service to the community. Despite the rich cultural heritage and traditional practices, the lack of accessible spiritual support has left a void in the lives of residents. Through this church planting project, we aim to provide a source of hope, compassion, empowerment towards the people of Dharamshala. So that's kind of the premise and the idea of opening a church. So like I was explaining before, this is kind of like the mountainside. A lot of Nepal looks like this. So you either have this or you have farms. There's no in between. So actually, and then you have the city side. But mountainside houses are very common. If you guys ever end up in Nepal or whatever, when you're driving up, there's like no railings or anything. So you just be careful. And
Is this picture in Dharamshala?
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
Okay.
So, but it looks very, very similar to, Nepal, yeah. This is like, if you fly into Kathmandu, when you fly in, you'll see stuff like this. So you'll see like from a distance, houses that are on the mountains. Again, 3-4 story buildings. Usually you'll have, I don't know if you guys can see, but like you see like the bottom parts, you'll have like a lot of storefronts. That's very typical. And then you have people living around here. And then the top, you have like the rooftop accessibility. And usually that's where the water source is too. You have like a water tank up here. But yeah, usually it's like multiple families kind of living. Here's another angle / view. So this is kind of like the bottom. This is top down. This is like bottom up kind of view. It is, obviously close to the mountains. Very, it's good for your lungs to breathe this kind of air. And then this is like the market / like towns area, you could say. And you can just imagine like a bunch of honking and noises.
Mopeds.
Yeah, mopeds, exactly. a lot of mopeds, a lot of motorcycles, no street signs or anything. And then the power lines also, you notice, and then like, you have the marketplace at the bottom and stuff like that. This is actually a little bit more modernized. I think this is a recent picture. And then, yeah, again, more marketplace. So this is like, you know, where you typically go to buy goods and food and, see, we have a tea stall, okay, and a hotel over here. So yeah, this is the marketplaces. It is very, very similar to Nepal, like identical, how compact it is, how the roads are built, et cetera, et cetera. But this is where all the commerce happens. So, a little bit more about the background of what's currently happening with Pastor, Vinod in the community. So he has established already a Nepalese community in the village, which again is majority Hindu. And they're doing fellowship in a rented house. Land is provided from the pastor where we can start our fellowship journey from this generation to upcoming generations. So here he has already purchased the land and he's looking to build either a facility or, you know, depending on whatever contributions he's able to get, even starting off with just like a simple roof and having people be able to sit outside and just have a place of worship essentially. Kind of similar, I think many of you guys were here when Ariana did her talk, but if you remember her picture or video when she was in church, and it's, I think this kind of like she's in this outdoor thing in like the middle of the jungle, and like, you know, it's nicely decorated and things like that. That's, you know, at the very least what we want to try to do, but depending on what we can do, then, you know, of course, a building, a facility, having classes, having, you know, things like a library or certain things, but so far it's just the land. And
So James, is the church you're talking about, is it in Nepal or in that northern?
yeah, so it's
area?
right in Dharamshala.
Which is part of Nepal.
So it's
Well,
the 30.
So
No, part of the-
Dharamshala is part of India. However,
Right.
there's a huge Nepalese population
Right.
that's
It lives there.
Yeah.
It's
What
okay. I
brought
got you.
them to, what brought the people from Nepal to that particular area of India? Is it because geographically or?
The Nepalese community there are from all over the Nepal.
It's a working class community,
Yeah,
so
work-
oftentimes a lot of Nepalese people have to like, you know, it's a very poor country, so the only way to make money is to actually leave. So you have places in America, in Dubai, in Australia, and then like Dharamshala where Nepalese will migrate to and then they'll work and things like that. So due to that, there's a huge working class. So it's a Nepalese community, but it's in India. If that makes sense.
What would you say, just one last question?
Mhm.
Would you say then the population in India, in terms of where the Nepalese communities are largely in the north, in that area that you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
As
So
opposed to in the southern area? So that's where
Yes.
the Nepalese
yes, so you
have kind
can.
of migrated to, if you will? Yeah.
Yeah, you can say that like these surrounding areas right here,
Okay.
including New Delhi,
New Delhi.
there's a lot of Nepalese workers.
Okay.
They tend to do like the labor work, so like the hard work or whatever.
Construction?
Construction, food service, hotel service, whatever, labor, roads, things like that. They tend to do that type of work. So then you have a lot of, you can say lower class, you know, working class, sort of Nepalese people in these areas. And then also I should have mentioned culturally, India and Nepal are very, very, very similar in terms of food, dialect, language.
Mhm.
Every Nepalese person can speak Hindi, but not the other way around.
What about English? Because I see the English signs on the
Yes,
road.
English is like the third, I'd say like probably the third, like if you're, let's say you're a Nepalese person in Dharamshala, you, of course, you know Nepalese, you know Hindi, and then you also probably know English. And again, keep in mind, it's a tourist, like it's, the primary income is tourism. So they're gonna be more open, they're gonna have English signs and, more modern things, you know, or at least try to.
Wouldn't the topography would be much more like Nepal? I mean, the pictures you showed
Yes.
remind me of
Yeah.
what Nepal would be like.
Yeah,
So
so-
it might be easier to move there. Besides just the jobs being there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
I mean, I don't know,
So,
I'm just speculating, but.
Like I said, if you can imagine, so there's three, let's see, okay, so you have the mountainside, then you have the village. The village is where, you have farming, and that's where, like, both my mom and my dad, they grew up on like the rural side, which is, if you can imagine, I think Kathmandu is like around here, right? So you have the cities, and then you have another city, the other second biggest city is called Pokhara, which is around here. It's also a big touristy area. But then like the rest is really just flat land and farms. And
Not mountains.
yeah, not really mountains. So not majority of the people I would say probably live in the rural areas. And of course the city would have, the biggest populations. But not necessarily mountains. And this is just my opinion. I feel like most people probably prefer not to, well, if they had to say, they probably prefer not to live in the mountains because there's a little bit of danger there with like mudslides and earthquakes and things of that nature. A lot of like, if you guys remember the Nepalese, the big earthquake that happened some years ago, a lot of the damage was due to just poor infrastructure. So a lot of these buildings aren't really equipped to handle earthquakes. Village, let's see here. So yeah, land provided by the pastor, place where Dalai Lama lives. He's an influential figure there, actively living, operating. Did I already go over this? Yes, I think I did. Did I go over this?
Not that last one.
Yeah, not the last one. I think I was on this. Okay. So like I said, the economy of the region is highly dependent on agriculture and tourism. The town is a major hill station and spiritual center. So a lot of people around the world come for the Buddhist tradition reasons, right? And it's one of the cities selected in 100 from India to be developed as a smart city under Indian Prime Minister flagship Minister Modi's flagship Smart Cities mission. I looked a little bit into this, and this is basically just they have like cleanup projects, they have modernization projects, and they're approaching it from like a tourism angle. So I think that the town of Dharamshala, they actually have this they have a decent sized like soccer stadium or something. So it's selected as one of the cities that they want to really try to advance or put more resources behind. Again, so they're dependent on agriculture and tourism. This is the actual ministry that's going on. So this is in the house that's currently being rented where they're now, I should mention the way a church begins in Nepal is exactly like that. And also the way that the personal church that I grew up in, Himalayan Baptist Church, the way it started was also like that. We started in our pastor's apartment and then grew, and then eventually we were able to, rent a room in actually a Presbyterian church in Gaithersburg, and they do the service there. And this is how it starts. You need a community, you need people of all ages, you see kids and stuff, and then you have the pastor who's leading and teaching these people. Because imagine teaching people some of whom may be illiterate, some of whom have obviously grew up with years and years of tradition, so they have a certain way of living, and then all of a sudden someone comes in and they're like, hey, this is the word, da 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 da. You can imagine and see where some of like the persecution may come, because it's not a common idea in these lands, right? Opposed to here, like most people, they already know about Christianity for the most part, or they know they have some semblance or idea of it. So this is how fellowship really starts, and then this is the actual church. And then more pictures of the community later on. I think I have a picture where all of them are together, so you'll see like how many people are worshiping. And then
Maybe you haven't covered this, but why is it growing so rapidly in terms of Christianity in the Nepalese area?
we'll cover that
Okay.
in depth
Thank
in
you.
a second. So this is right, Johnny. This is the land that the pastor has. It's above. I think the POV is like he's on a mountain looking down or something. But this is the land where they're hoping to build. And can you explain, Johnny, like I think you were telling me the way like materials are transported are through donkeys. So you have to use donkeys, you have to get a lot of wood and move it back and forth. So the process to build something is very inefficient, let's say, or hard, right? So there's a lot of challenges, right? But again, beautiful area. And then this is more the, just a mountain, mountainside view, kind of this area. So this is where we're hoping to plant and build the church.
So is your village nearby?
Yes, yes. So this is, again, it's in the city. It's obviously not, right where the heart of like the marketplace is, but a little bit to the side.
Walking distance.
Yes.
For people to come by
Walking,
walking.
moped distance.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so to answer Bob's question, this is a great article from BBC. I have links here. If you guys want to read more of the articles, just email me. I'll send you all the links. But I kind of summarized a little bit from this article, but this is a really, really good article. And I have a few articles I'm going to talk about. So, make sure I have time. So, the Christian community makes up less than 2% of Nepal's population. Hindus count for 80%, Buddhists about 9%. Census data reveals its growth. In 1951, there were 0 Christians in Nepal and just 458 in 1961. Missionaries, many of them South Korean, like Pang. So the article talks about the impact of South Korean missionaries in Nepal. And funny enough, that when I was reading and researching, I had no idea, but you remember how I mentioned earlier, my father helped start one of the first Nepalese churches in America. He was guided, and our pastor was guided by another pastor who happened to be Korean. And this whole time I'm like, why is this Korean man helping us? Like, I had no idea. I had zero idea. But the South Koreans actually, they made it a mission of theirs to, help empower Nepalese communities and really teach the right way and help educate pastors and, get them to spread the word and how to build a church and things like that. So it was just a crazy connection for me. So missionaries, many of them like Pang. So Pang, he's this, him and his wife are South Korean missionaries who are credited for a lot of the spread of churches. I can't say, I don't know if they're the primary factor or reason, but they're one of the sources that really push things forward. So missionaries, many of them like Pang, have helped build one of the world's fastest growing Christian communities in Nepal, a former Hindu kingdom and the birthplace of Lord Buddha. Pang has overseen the opening of nearly 70 churches in his 2 decades in Nepal, mostly in the Dhading district, 2 hours northwest of the capital, Kathmandu. So that's really amazing. The latest data from the National Christian Community Survey says that there are now 7,758 churches in the still overwhelmingly Hindu country. Nepal is now a secular state, and the 2015 Constitution enshrines religious freedom. However, an anti-conversion law that came into force in 2018 means anyone convicted of encouraging someone to change their faith faces up to 5 years in jail.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's really awful. There's a lot of historically, there's been attacks, 70s and 80s, in 90s. There's attacks on churches. I think there's small bombings. There's it's hard, I guess you could say. Now, you'll read in this article that so this article kind of displays both sides of the story. You have one side where you have these South Korean ministers really trying to convert people of Nepal, and then you have people of Nepal, mainly political figures, that are pushing back against it, and they have reasons as well, and so it's kind of this back and forth kind of fight. But an interesting thing that Pastor Pang does is him and his wife specifically focus on the harder communities to convert. So they'll go to communities where it's absolutely no, we don't want you here, whatever. And they end up being able to convince the people and establish churches. And so they're kind of fighting the fight. You could say they're actively going against the government and the laws and things of that nature.
We have some friends who are from South Korea who are Presbyterian. Is that the major domination with Pastor Pang? Or are there many?
So I don't particularly know, but what I do know is the Nepalese church I'm in, like I said, they're renting out a space from the called, I think, Bethany Presbyterian. So locally, I know that the Korean Presbyterians are strong. They're actually so, their church is actually so well organized and built and things of that nature that they actually have two buildings adjacent across each other, one for Korean speakers and one for English speakers. So we're in the English speaking building, but they have like, good resources and things of that nature. So seeing that growth, it just, kind of inspired our community. So in that Korean church, like I said, we have the Nepalese church there, but there's also I think, Mexican, church as well. So they've been able to, maybe I should do more research, but I think it's a motif of the Koreans to really spread the gospel through different, different, races and different ethnicities. I don't know.
Susan, it's my understanding that there are more Presbyterians in Korea than there are in the US.
Oh, that's it. Is that it?
Yeah, that's Ed, yeah. Thank you, Ed. Someone?
James, I'm a little confused because now I thought we were talking about the Nepalese church community in India,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
So
so the persecutions against the churches are not occurring in Dharamshala, right?
well, again, imagine the town is primarily Buddhist. Again, that's where the Dalai Lama lives.
Mhm.
And then India as a whole is Hindu. So I can imagine that there would be now today, I don't think there's many, it's becoming inch by inch more and more religiously free. So I don't imagine that there's hopefully not going to be any big trouble or anything by this church being established. That area is like known as like a religious sort of center. So I don't imagine it. But this is kind of describing the history of how it came to be. I feel like now we're at a good point, like the churches are growing, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think, I hopefully wouldn't imagine any issues, with opening.
The reason I'm interested also is I recently read the Covenant of Water that Pastor Emily referred to, and I was so surprised to learn about a community called the St. Thomas Christians in the southern portion of India, and I was very ignorant about the presence of Christian faiths and communities in India. So I did not get the impression from that novel, for instance, that there was overt hostility against Christians. And so that's what I'm asking, whether that's a factor that needs to be considered here.
I honestly, I wouldn't think so, but it is, it is a fight. Now, for example, these articles, I sent them out, you can read in depth, but this is like an example of, like what would happen. So, I think there's a story where like a pastor went into a village where he's trying to convert and they didn't want him to convert, et cetera, and they jailed him for like 3 days.
And this is in Nepal.
Yeah, this is in Nepal. And then he got out. So at least the attacks aren't that crazy. Like jail for 3 days versus bombing the church. Like, so I pray and I hope that there wouldn't be any hostility or animosity. And I think it's trending towards that.
Yeah, did the pastor that wants to set up this church, was the persecution law influential in his decision to move to India? And
Maybe, Johnny, I don't know.
was that influential? Was the persecution law influential in him deciding to make that move? Or just to serve a different group?
Yeah, just to serve a different group. There is also persecution in India too, some of these states, but that state is not much of the persecution for right now.
Thank you.
So yeah, like I said, this is a great article. I learned a lot too from reading this BBC article, and I think I have more articles. So this is actually an example of one of the churches from Pastor Pang, that he opened in Nepal. So as you can see, I believe like that's the facility, and you see the cross and the, outdoors, and, it looks really nice. So that's an example of one of the churches that he's built. And then this is another article where I got some quotes from it, but it kind of talks about Actually, it's persecution score. So it says Nepal continues to be a place filled with persecution for followers of Christ. Nepal's fall in rank belies its persecution score, which stayed nearly as high as last year. So to answer your question, it's still, despite a decrease in violence, pressure in almost every sphere of life went up, showing that daily life remains difficult for Christians, especially converts from Hinduism. Despite some good news, the government allowed some Christian charities to help with COVID-19 relief, a situation that remains difficult for Nepal's believers. This is another good article from Open Doors. And this is another article from Christian Post, but it kind of talks about, to answer your question, another reason why the rise and the growth of churches have been. So it says 1951, Nepal reported no Christians, and in 1961, that number increased to just 458. Today, the world's Christian database ranks the country as the 12th fastest growing Christian population in the world, with 1,285,000 believers, said database co-director Gina. So you can see the tremendous growth in just 40, 50, 60 years. Nepalese believers tend to gather in churches smaller than 100 people, although some churches are far larger. Believers in rural villages want practical teachings on how to live out their faith, while believers in cities want to know more about Christian theology. Once hated and admired, it's a new community that people join even at the cost of their families. It heals this. Oh, sorry, by the way, these are, like I said, excerpts from the article, so they might be a little bit out of context, but it's a new community that people join even at the cost of their families. It heals the sick, it helps the poor, and transforms sinners. People want the life that church gives, sometimes even for the wrong reasons. Despite persecution, it multiplies. So again, this article kind of shows both sides. So like you have people trying to convert, then you have people who are fighting back against it, and reasons for both sides. But then this article in particular talks about miracles. So people, heal, like all of a sudden being healed from illness after prayer, or things like that happen. Or there's a case where a woman had like, something wrong with her, and then she was able to heal it. And then this spreads throughout the village, and then people are more curious about the idea, and then they kind of like, oh, okay, what is this about? So the article is actually titled "Nepal Miracles Drive One of the World's Fastest Growing Churches." Yeah. So this is the actual picture of the fellowship in the house. So we have kids, men, women, but yeah, they meet faithfully in the house. I should have mentioned. So Pastor, to my understanding, he had one church in Nepal where it's still active. He's installed ministers, so that's, he's a little bit older. So, but his active role is pastoring and then installing ministers and creating community. He also opened one in Israel too. So there's an active Nepalese community in Israel, and this is people getting baptized. Yeah, this is in Israel from Pastor Vinod.
You were there.
Oh, wow.
We had,
in this river?
10 years ago, we had a church trip, and a number of us got baptized just like that with those same white
Oh,
clothes
wow.
on.
Yeah.
In the water with Sean.
I think I saw there's a book there, right?
There's a book.
Yeah.
Pictures like that. Exactly right.
Oh, that's awesome. So these are more words from the pastor. He had this proposal letter, and I took some excerpts from it, but this is from his words. So community development. Church will actively engage in community sharing gospel development initiatives such as literacy programs, health camps, trained leadership in Christ to uplift the villagers' quality and spiritual life. Fostering social harmony. We intend to promote social harmony by organizing events that celebrate the village's diverse cultural heritage, encouraging inclusivity and mutual understanding among the different religious and ethnic groups. Children and youth outreach. We will prioritize children and youth engagement, creating a safe and nurturing environment that offers educational support, life skills training, and recreational activities. These are just letters, appreciation letters / I think I have like a certificate, but from Pastor Bernard. I think this is an appreciation letter. I think so the United Nepalese Church in Tel Aviv, Israel. Next time you go, you should visit. But I think this is the larger church that will help sponsor his church, and it's appreciation letter. And then another certificate of appreciation. Is that also? Yeah, that's also from Israel. And then this is in 2009, Tel Aviv, a United Nepalese Church. You can see, I was even shocked to see something like this. Is really like things like this is shocking for me to see because, like, I personally have seen the growth of my Nepalese church community and other Nepalese church communities, but seeing something. Oh, and Israel is one of those places too where a lot of Nepalese migrant workers go. It's where one of my mom's sister, she ended up working there for like a long time, leaving from Nepal. So yeah, as you can see, thriving community. I think this is another picture. I think at like one of their events. Definitely an older picture, but yeah, they have. This is really distance, but this is the United Nepalese Fellowship symbol right here. I think you can see like right here the symbol, and this guy is holding up the sign.
James, it seems quite amazing that not only is the growth of the Christian churches in Nepalese and in northern India, they're growing significantly, very fast. But where those folks are migrating to, I mean, you're talking about Israel here, you're talking about the US.
Yeah.
Those communities are growing in Christianity as well.
Yeah.
In the other countries.
Yeah, because so Nepal, the primary source of income is actually people putting money into it, whether it be you leave to another country, work and send money back, or you're a tourist. So that's why it's also known as like one of the most like hospitable countries. But so due to that, you have right now there is a little bit of a crisis where so many youth and young adults from Nepal want to leave. So they're leaving because they need to work, they need to find work, they need to support their family back home. So you have areas, little pockets in the world, for example, Australia, both in Sydney and Melbourne. There's some of my family lives there, and there's big Nepalese populations there. So you'll see like when one person ends up there, they tell everybody else, hey,
There's jobs.
yeah, just come through. Like it also has to do with like applications and visa statuses and things like that. Australia is a little bit more lenient than America, especially for students. So a lot of students actually go to Australia, and there's a huge Nepalese.
But they're bringing their faith with them.
Yes.
It seems.
Well,
You're describing it.
I would say it's more so you have these little pockets of Nepalese people, and whoever's bringing the faith, or ideally if there's already a church there or community established there, they just have a broader exposure to it. Because for example, I would say like my dad's story, there was no particular churches. He brought his faith to help establish a church or whatever, and then now it spreads, and now you have access to things like that. So like I said, last year when we were in Dallas, he was able to go to a church in Nepalese church in Dallas, which is incredible because in his shoes, you can imagine just like him seeing that, like growing up in Nepal, it's now foreign country, and then going to Texas and then seeing that, it's like it's really incredible. So I would say it's like even if like we put Christianity to the side, there's just a lot of Nepalese people all over the world, and they're in these little pockets. Then when we add Christianity back to the mix, now we can sort of see where these communities are forming, and it's a little bit easier in I'm sure in the Western world, and a little bit easier in probably Australia to establish these churches and communities. In the heart of where it's at though, in Nepal or Dharamshala, and that's also actually been another benefit. People that are in Nepal, that are in the churches, that are able to learn English, that are able to take Christianity in. So someone like my father, for example, or someone like my Nepalese pastor, his name is Pastor Gurin. Both of them were able to take that, and then when they eventually left Nepal, they're able to spread the word, and wherever they ended up, because regardless, in their situations, they had to leave in order to make a better way of life. But then wherever they are, they're able to sort of spread that word. So.
So did I understand you correctly that most of the Nepalese that moved to Dharamshala, they are still Hindu? And
Oh,
so
yeah,
this is outreach.
Yeah.
So the church is intended to expand the Christian reach to
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
immigrant
Yeah.
sector.
Mhm.
Or, these immigrants and perhaps maybe, through their outreach and their other programs, increase the Christianity
Yeah.
in that pocket, in that little
Yeah.
segment, or like your dad here, and without the persecution
Right.
that might happen back
Yeah.
home,
So.
or the
Just,
danger.
yeah, just very briefly, Nepal, they're moving to countries that have democracies. What is the government of Nepal, just very briefly? Is it a communist country or a dictatorship? I don't know.
Corrupt. That's the best way to put it. Like, in all honesty, corrupt. There's the history of Nepal's politics. You have to look it up. It's crazy. What is it now?
It's another word. It's Nepalese right now is a communist ruled country by Hinduism people.
There's, it's become over time more liberal and things like that, but the infrastructure of the government, the way they just revamped the Constitution. It took like 5-10 years of protests to do that. There's a lot of political turmoil. Like there's a lot of, and from the people, they have a certain like inherent distrust of the government, things like that. Like even more recently, like when the earthquakes are happening, they received a lot of funding from the world. Like it was in a sense, like the world, like Red Cross or other organizations would put a lot of money into Nepal. But then the government misused that money. So then when COVID happened, they got like none of the relief. So they were really suffering. So yeah, that's kind of, and that's why also it's like a kind of push from the people to like, have these, at least systems of faith and responsibility and things like that. Because you can imagine if the government's not doing what they're supposed to do, a lot of people who are in poverty are not gonna be as ambitious or have the drive to like want to go do things. That's why something like this community, like you were saying, is like sort of primed for the sort of revitalization or a start of something. It's sort of ready, or and that's how he's feeling it. And he's been able to have people preaching. I mean, people coming to the house services and things like that. But yeah, it's many different obstacles, I guess you could say, or have been many obstacles. Let me see if I have any more pictures. No, oh, so I'll show that video in a second, but these are more words from the pastor. So local leadership empowerment, so fostering the development of local leaders who can take ownership of the church's initiatives and ensure continuity and relevance to the community's evolving needs. So if you remember that BBC article with the Korean minister, so what, from my understanding, what him and his wife do, they go to the villages, they establish, obviously they bring Bibles and hymnals and things, but they establish like this presence, and then they get the church, but then they really, really train the pastors. So they train them as far as, how to be spiritual leaders. Because interestingly enough, one of the other articles, they mentioned this young man who was like in his 20s, and he became a Hindu priest. Later, he found out about Christianity, or something was brought to him, and then he read more about it, and then he became a priest, like a pastor himself. He converted, became a pastor himself. So someone like that is like someone who has that like kind of religious and spiritual calling. But obviously, if they have nobody to teach them, or nobody to tell them, or at least show, how to grow a church, how to build a church, how to have a sustainable, church, all the things that come with the community development, things like that, then it's really, really hard to do. And he without being introduced to it, it would probably still be like a Hindu pastor. So I would say this is probably probably the most important aspect to all of this sentence right here. So fostering the development of local leaders who can take ownership of the church's initiatives, ensure continuity and relevance to the to the community's evolving needs. I think that's probably, in my opinion, one of the most important aspects. Financial stability, sustainability. So develop sustainable fundraising strategies, including seeking donations from individuals, organizations, churches to support the ongoing operations and community projects. By establishing a church in the heart of Dharamshala, we believe we can make a positive and lasting impact on the lives of its residents. We are committed to working hand in hand with the community and local authorities to ensure the success and sustainability of this endeavor. And then this video, I believe they're taking the Lord's Supper, passing around juice and bread, things like that. But yeah, very humble house fellowship. Like you can imagine how kind of culturally shocking it is to someone coming to something like this for the first time. And then this pastor gives the word. Singing is a big part of Nepalese churches. Actually, I sort of told this earlier, but Nepalese church goes on for like 4 or 5 hours. They say there's nothing better to do. It goes on for quite long. I remember like services in Nepal that we went to, like it was hilariously long. The Nepalese church that I grew up in, it's also 4 or 5 hours. So it starts at 3, but you show up at 2. It's supposed to end at 6, but it ends at 7. Then you eat, and then it goes however long you want it to go on for. So, yeah. And there's one other thing I wanted to say. Yeah, so the song they're singing, it's in our hymnal. I know for a fact it translates to one of the songs that you guys probably commonly know, but I don't know off the top of my head.
So would they have hymnals and Bibles written in Nepalese that
Yeah.
they can use in their worship, or
Yeah.
they would try to work, that'd be one of the financial things they'd have to work
Um,
towards?
I think something like that today is more readily accessible. So I believe they probably should have Bibles and hymnals. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
And so that would be, I mean, so when you're seeking the financial stability and the support of other organizations,
Yeah,
you can reach out to organizations that provide those kinds of things in other languages, or in addition to all the other things that you need to
mhm,
put in place.
absolutely. Now another kind of issue with that is like, I think literacy rates have gone up, but a lot of people still illiterate. So they're more verbally, that's how all the interactions start. They have to verbally introduce it, talk about it, feel it, and then hopefully if they're able to read and then read more into the word. That story I told earlier about that young man, Hindu priest who converted into a priest, he was actually really moved by reading. So he, I think the pastor talked to him about it. Then when he actually read the Bible, he like was reading, and that really like opened his heart. And he was able to read the word and then say, okay, so that does play a huge fact.
So it depends on the audience. If the audience is illiterate, then it's verbal.
Yeah.
In their language that they speak, and if they're not literate, then, if they are literate, then
Mhm.
it can be both written and spoken.
Yeah, and then that also ties into the community development aspect. So that would definitely be one of the areas to focus on,
Sure.
literacy, education, things like that. I believe it's all the slides I have. We have 5 minutes. Any
So
questions?
are you think it's a great presentation, by the way, thank you so much, but, are you kind of suggesting that we should, maybe as a church, figure out how we, through our mission outreach, provide some support for this church?
Yeah, so
proposing?
So honestly, in my shoes, Pastor Bernard had just reached out to my dad, to see if there's any support, and then, actually, he's coming this year. I don't know when he's coming, but he's actually coming to America, this year, because, my sister's having a baby, so,
Who's coming back?
he's about to come to America. But he had asked, just sending the word out there, like, and then my dad strongly encouraged me to, just present it to the church and see. And then, I really have no idea how, like, mission committee works, so, I just.
But he presents
Yeah,
mission
yeah, I
committee.
presented it and, seeking support. Now, the thing is, like, financially, like $1,000 would go a long way. Like $2,000 would build like a roof and they could have outdoor seating. It's kind of similar to like Ariana's presentation, like how that church is constructed. Like 10,000 or 20,000, I could be wrong on the numbers, but that could build a whole facility. And then X amount could, so really whatever's, it can be a few hundred that could be able to get a lot of books and hymnals. So it's, there's not really, I guess you could say, a set amount. Literally any amount would help. And then the purpose of the presentation is just to present the idea, and see if there's any interest or people are interested in and things like that. But
I have a question about whether, Pastor, is it Beno? Is that
Beno.
saying that properly? Does, when he's done the churches previously in other communities or, in this case, would he seek, denominational support from the Baptist, the Presbyterians, the Korean Presbyterian? Will there be not just individual churches or donors, but also more organized? Like PCUSA has World Mission, that kind of thing. Has he used that in the past, or is that type of support
do you
not
know,
as
Johnny,
workable?
if there's any denominational?
Yeah. He hasn't gone with any kind of denomination. So first thing is he's just looking for a church, like, which will, the major will be focusing on Trinity God. So he's open to Baptist, Presbyterian. So the most focus is to the Trinity God and the baptism. So he's pretty open on that.
But not one, yeah, so, yeah.
I was just wondering if I'm not hearing everything. Is the church community already formed? They're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, so the church. community-
Yeah, this is the community.
Now they're looking for, they have that.
To move away from the rented space to a.
Yeah, basically having a facility, I mean, so, there's just certain limitations, of course you can have with just a rented place, but having your own facility, even if like this was there, I believe this is a house, but even if this was the facility, just having that space like a center for, classes, education programs, relief, place to worship, things like that, place where people can come. So that's primarily, but the community's already there. And then again, that's how these churches start. They start in the houses or, huts or whatever, outdoors. And then they work towards finding a place and then come to church.
What is the current, roughly what the size of the current community that's meeting in?
Would you know, John?
The numbers of the people,
Yeah, that are
How
already
many
there.
people?
probably like 35 to 40. Probably.
In your baptism picture earlier, it looked like mostly women.
Yes.
Is the Christian community women driven?
Oh, yeah. I have no,
That picture was from Israel.
yes. But even in this, you can see these are all women, and this is in Dharamshala. It's all women. I could be wrong, but there's a article I read somewhere. I should link it, but women are the primary. I guess you could say they're a big reason and cause of the increase of Christianity in Nepal. They almost every Nepalese church I know, they have a women's fellowship, and it's a form of like women's empowerment also, because historically, Nepal hasn't been very women empowering up until, you know, recently, and it's getting better and better, but like, they weren't, encouraged to be educated, they weren't encouraged to work, things of that nature. So it's, I think that's part of the reason why women are able to now feel more empowered and be able to feel more stronger. Any other questions?
Where was the church your father started in Gaithersburg, or where was that?
Yeah, so I remember we had met, my dad, Pastor Cho, he's the, Korean pastor who he helped spread Nepalese churches a lot. Pastor Gurung, and, my mom, and I think like another guy, but they actually met in Baltimore. 'Cause, Pastor Ch, and this is me as a kid remembering all this, but like he had really encouraged Pastor Gurung to start. And then they eventually did start in his apartment in Gaithersburg, and it would literally be my family, his family, and like one other person. And now that church has grown to like 25, or maybe like, let's say 10 to 15 different families, and like 30 to 40 people consistently. And then when we do our like, you know, Christmas or Easter, or when all the churches combine and they have a big picnic, it's like 100+ people. Yeah.
Is the church where they meet the one up near, right off of Quince Orchard?
Yes.
That
Yeah,
Presbyterian
the
church?
Korean
Yep,
Presbyterian.
I know where it is.
Yes.
Because there's several Presbyterian,
Yeah.
Korean Presbyterian churches in Montgomery County.
Mm.
There's one in Rockville, but that one I know where, exactly where it is, near the post office.
Yeah,
The first field.
the Korean community, shout out to them. They're really, open, welcoming. There's a lot of our Nepalese youth. They're on like the Korean youth groups and like play football and soccer and stuff.
So the
they're-
youth integrate with the Korean church for their youth groups
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
kind of
And
thing.
then also the Spanish speaking church also,
They all come together.
yeah, so the Koreans have been historically just, at least in my experience and through reading, they've been so, open to the idea of, you know, different, helping a different, you know, group of people out with, Christianity and things like that. Mhm.
It just feels like the first century Christian
Yeah.
communities that we learn about from the New Testament, and it
Yeah.
feels very exciting.
Yeah. That's how, I guess, you know, biblically too, they started churches and houses and outdoors and caves and mountains and things like that. So that's how it spreads. It's very, you know, fascinating. But yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.